Hi, I'm Mona.
I'm Nishi Rose.
And I'm Anissa. Welcome to episode 70 of Ethnically Speaking, the show where we discuss everything affecting the UK's highly melanated communities, from current affairs to pop culture and everything in between. Sophie's taking a break to focus on another project, but she will be back on the panel next week. We're always keeping it 100, and today we're talking all about the return of the holidays. So from next week, people in England will be allowed to travel abroad for leisure once more. A new traffic light system will mean anyone travelling to one of 12 countries on the green list will not need to quarantine on their return to the UK. However, holiday makers will still have to take pre-departure and post-arrival COVID tests. Airfares are skyrocketing in anticipation of demand, and many countries are not ready to begin letting in UK tourists. Have you already started planning your next vacay? And if so, where are you heading? Is a holiday abroad worth the extra hassle, or do the additional expenses and administrative requirements spoil all the experiences?
So, as a disclaimer, I'm currently in Costa Rica, and I would say, okay, my experience so far is that there really is we talk about this administrative issue stuff. And it doesn't sound like a huge barrier in the great scheme of things, but I'm here for 2 months. And so even if I was going for 2 weeks, or even 1 week, some of the stuff I've had to do as a result to even get out the country, I'm not sure it's been worth it. So for me being here, I had to first do one PCR test. Before that, I had to do a rapid test to get here. Then I had to get full travel insurance to cover everything to even enter the country. Then I had to get a form from the Ministry of Health, which here in Costa Rica, to kind of allow me to even get on the plane. And then most of all, one of the kind of biggest thing that happened while I was on my journey is that I got to Germany, where I had to transfer through to get to Costa Rica, and I missed my connecting flight to Costa Rica. And they don't come every day. But because of the COVID regulations, and actually I don't think this is really to do with the administration issues themselves. I think this is more my own problem. However, I would like to share with you, I was in the airport, but I couldn't leave the airport because of these restrictions. So I had to live in the terminal without access to my suitcase for 3 days, which I would say wasn't the finest experience ever. But while I was there, as I say, I was threatened with arrest if I tried to go outside, get a breath of fresh air during those 3 days. I couldn't have access to my suitcase for the same reasons. Plus, when I finally sort of got through Germany and arrived in Costa Rica, you can't, obviously at the moment, that will change next week, but you can't leave the country legally without getting a £5,000 fine unless you're coming for work. So I also had to work here. I say had to, like I'm complaining, obviously it's amazing. But I was basically walking the beach with a plastic bag and cleaning public toilets for 2 weeks here in Costa Rica. And the thing you notice at the moment is that every other person here is also British, because this is the only country you can come to where you don't have to quarantine when you get here. And you also don't need a visa, because the visa processes back in the UK right now aren't, they're really slowed down, and often they just take your passport. So with all those things in mind, I would say, because I'm here for a long time, I think it's been worth it, but it's super expensive. You have all these additional costs, all these additional things to do. And then when you come back, which isn't going to change, you also have to get 3 PCR tests. So that's an additional £500 or something to even get back into the UK. So that's my kind of main kind of overview of what I think is it's worth it if you are truly desperate to leave or have a lot of extra cash to spend. Or going for a long time. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it. I would just wait out.
I think that what you've gone through is a lot.
Honestly, I'm shocked.
I feel like it's done deliberately, though, to deter people, because, at the end of the day, we are in a pandemic, and even though things are being lifted up, people can't just go crazy and start, flying across the globe and stuff, because realistically, we still need to have those safety measures in to make sure that we don't get ourselves back where we just came from. So I do think that the reason that they've bumped all of these things and made it a lot more difficult is to deter people from doing so. However, that being said, what I don't agree with is the fact that if you look at some people, for example, like Ryanair, who was supposed to be really cheap and cheerful, a flight that they put for £152 has now doubled and gone up to about £300. British Airways, a flight that you could get for £262, is now all the way up to £562. And I'm just like, to capitalise at a time like this is a really dickish thing to do, because we know that economically we're going to be in a crisis, but we didn't put ourselves in here. This wasn't voluntary. Everyone is suffering, and everybody in the economy is suffering. So we're looking at small businesses, large businesses. Everyone's suffering, to be honest with you. And we knew this was going to come, and we just kind of have to pull together, grit our teeth and get on with it. But for them to be allowed to do this and skyrocket prices in the space of literally 2 days, which we knew was coming anyway, I just think is really, really unfair, because then not only are we split into kind of like a two-tier society as in who is going to take the vaccine, which I'll get into in a minute, we're now coming in like, well, if you're wealthy and you can afford it, then good for you, you get to have a holiday, which I don't really think is fair, because everyone's been in a lockdown and everyone has suffered to their own expenses of it. So why is it now that if you've got money, you can kind of like escape, but if you don't, you're almost being persecuted because you don't have the funds to get out? And not to say that you don't have the funds for the appropriate processes. You don't have the funds just for the bloody ticket that 2 weeks ago was bloody £100, and now they've made it triple the price. I just think that's so unfair. And then going back to my point about the two-tier system, there's going to be some people who aren't vaccinated, and this has caused a lot of ruckus with people and kind of had like a division, because some people feel that very strongly about getting vaccinated, which to each their own. But I think to now implement this passport scheme or having these documents or policing people as to where they can and can't go because they don't have the vaccine, not getting the vaccine isn't just depicted as, don't really want to get the vaccine. Some people could genuinely be in a health situation where they can't get the vaccine. They might be allergic to certain things and they're just not able to get it. And then also, it might be personal choice. And I know that some people get their back up when it comes to the vaccine. But if you think about it, if you're not in a vulnerable category, right, and you don't have any underlying health issues, and you are not necessarily somebody who would be affected by COVID, quote unquote, if you caught it, maybe be able to shake it off easier than someone else. If it's your choice to not get vaccinated, the people who do get vaccinated, they're safe and protected, right? So as long as you worry about yourself, someone else not being vaccinated doesn't actually affect you because you're vaccinated, right? So having this passport put in, or having these legislations where people can kind of be split into two tiers, that in itself is going to bring a lot of segregation and a lot of problem. So the whole thing is very, very up in the air, if that makes sense. And in terms of me wondering if I was to go on holiday, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't actually think that the whole process is worth it. And I know some of my girlfriends are going to be watching here like, you'll definitely come with me on Hot Girl Summer. No, I ain't. Because I just think that we have been inside for so long. Staycations, staying at home, staying in your territory and just seeing what London has to offer, Birmingham has to offer, what your city has to offer is not a bad thing. The borders are literally just about to open up. You've got to walk before you can run. I think people need to take time. And like I said, follow the safety measures. Just because it's open, it doesn't mean it's a free for all and everyone should just cram through the gates, which is exactly what I think is going to happen. So to answer the question, no, I don't think I'll be booking any holidays soon.
Yeah, you see, I'm definitely booking some holidays soon. Well, that's the thing, I'm already planning in my mind. I do have a holiday booked. I'm not going to say where, because as I've been saying it, people are like, are you sure it's still happening? It's kind of like, can you mind your own business, boo? Let me deal with what I'm dealing with. But looking forward, I've been thinking to myself, okay, well, I've got this one holiday planned, but there are several other places I want to go now. So I've been looking at deals saying, okay, I'll go here. I was thinking, but in my mind, I'm being quite idealistic because I don't even know if these countries are going to be open, if they're going to be receiving guests. So in my mind, what I've been saying is, oh, at the end of summer, oh, I'd love to do a cheeky weekend in Ibiza. Oh yeah, let me go to Jamaica for Christmas. Like this is how I've been planning out the rest of my year. But it's kind of difficult because it's like, I want to do this, but I also understand how extensive the process is going to be. So I keep thinking to myself, maybe what I should do is have in my mind, this is where I'm going, on the select dates, and then just like a couple weeks before, when I feel, okay, I'm really sure that I can do this, then book beforehand, because I'm also afraid of all the rules changing again and I'm getting things cancelled, because it's just happened so many times. Like none of the rules, none of the things that they're implementing, thinking about, talking about, it works for right now, but it doesn't have any longevity. So it's really hard to kind of plan anything. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm definitely gonna be out of here. Like I do plan to be out with a capital out. But I wouldn't say that I think some of the processes are worth it. I mean, Nushi, what you said was just horrific. And I really like airports. So if I had to stay there for a day, I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's so fun. But past the one day, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So kudos to you for making it that long, because I could not have. But for me, it's just for like when you get back and you have to quarantine, or if you go there and quarantine, and then that whole hotel thing that they have in England, which I just think is nonsensical, because it's like, I'm coming back to my country where I live in. Can I not quarantine at home? Why do I have to be in this quarantine hotel? It makes no sense and I have to pay for it. So those things aren't worth it to me. But I'm stepping out in good faith and thinking that everything's going to be over soon. I'm going to go on a holiday. I'm going to be merry on my way. I know it's probably very idealistic, but that's literally how I'm planning at this point.
Wait, I just want to say, when I was in the airport, because it's COVID, everything was closed as well. So it's not like you can go to duty free. Well, you can go duty free, but none of the shops were open. Like none of the places to eat were open. So I was trapped in a closed down airport for 3 days. It wasn't good. It's like, but I agree with you in general. Like otherwise it would be fun to spend that much time in the airport. But the other thing I was going to say, like, moan about what you said, was like the two different classes of people, with the rich being able to go abroad and the like people who don't have as much money not being able to. Like, there's two things though. The first is going on holiday a human right? Is it actually a right that people should be able to go on holiday, or is it a luxury? And it's just that the stakes are now higher because the airline industry and the travel industry has suffered more than any other. And ultimately they're having to hike the prices in order for them to survive in this kind of short term. Because so many like airlines have been decimated, had to shut down. So many routes, like even the fact I had to come here via Germany is because the normal, like the traditional route, from the UK, which is a BA flight to San Jose, the capital, has stopped. Nearly all the flights were stopped from America here for ages. And so all the sort of different compartments of this industry have been destroyed. And like you can see it even now here. Like a lot of resorts and restaurants and so on have had to close down. Like even now here we're in lockdown. So everything has closed at 9, like every single night at 9 o'clock, the FBI, the Costa Rican equivalent, will come by. And so people are having to make money in order to sustain themselves for the future. So in my mind, although it's annoying that everything's much more expensive, I don't think it's wrong. I think it's necessary. But you know what I mean? And there are, as you say, like staycations. And again, I feel guilty because I'm here and I'm saying like, why everyone should just stay in the UK. But there are other options. You know what I mean? Like you guys stay at home, like, you know, go to Cornwall. You have a good time. Some scones. Like a pasty. But yeah, I think that's the thing. I think, you know, as you're right, like everyone has suffered and everyone deserves some kind of escape from being trapped in their houses, but what that looks like isn't prescriptive. Like, there are many different ways to enjoy life outside of escaping to a foreign country. Again, as I say, I realise I'm saying this from a point of hypocrisy, but I don't think that's as bad as it appears on the surface.
Nushi, you asked a question, but I don't know if I got your answer to your question. Do you think a holiday's a luxury or a need?
Yeah,
or
totally.
Like a human right? Okay.
No. A holiday is definitely not a human right. Like, it can't be a human right because it's an industry. It's an industry built on private business. You know, and so because of that, like the people who have more will always go on more holidays if that's what they want, and people who have less won't. And that's the issue. There is not the travel industry. The issues there are like to do with inequality and distribution of wealth and things like that. Like, this is just symptomatic of wider social issues, economic issues.
Okay.
The reason why I'm going to have to politely disagree is because I think that looking at people's circumstances, being in the situation that we're in wasn't a choice. No one chose for COVID to hit us and to be put into a pandemic. There are people out there who might want to go and see their families, for example, who have been not been able to see them for a really long period of time. And if you want to go and check on, I don't know, your elderly parents who live in a different country, and now because you're looking at the prices, that might be something that you have to reevaluate. I don't think that's fair. And I don't think that people are going to sit down and look at each individual case and treat it accordingly. It's going to be like a one size fits all, because I get what you mean about going on holiday, it being a luxury. But even that being said, we've never experienced a pandemic like this before. And the way that it's affected people is monumental in terms of people's mental health. We know that people have been exposed to domestic abuse. There's been like horrific things. Even for me working in a school, we've had vulnerable children who have been like exposed to unfortunate circumstances. We've had children who are parents of key workers who have had to be like thrown in the midst of everything whilst their parents are out there, like suffered a great deal of distress. A holiday at this point doesn't necessarily seem like a luxury to me, where someone's just like, oh, you know, I really want to go to like Barbados and kick my feet up. It might actually be a necessity where people need to get out of the country, feel the sun on their skin, get that vitamin D, get that endorphins, just come out to actually assimilate back into normality and know, okay, cool, like this is over. And does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Because I do understand what you're talking about, the distribution of wealth and it being a choice, 100%, like you have to live in your means. If you're making a certain amount of money, you're just saying, hey, you know, I want to go up to Dubai and live up a baby girl lifestyle. If you can't fund that, then yeah, you know, there's nothing to do about that. It's living within your means. But what I'm saying is, if ticket prices are skyrocketing and people aren't able to afford it, because based on what it was before and based how much it's gone up within 2 days, within a week, every industry has been crippled by this, you know, like even, I'm not too sure, so I don't want to like throw around statistics and stuff, but just imagine if people were going to work and all of a sudden TFL said, okay, well, travel costs that cost you £1 there now costs you £4 in the space of literally 2 days or a week. How are people even supposed to try to come to the realization to live up to that? I just think it's too much. So in that sense, I don't actually think that it is a luxury.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with some of your sentiments, Mona. I think for me, it's not even the physical place where you go is the luxury. I think it's just the concept of a holiday, like a break. I think it's a basic human need. Like everybody needs a break. But you have to do that also within your means. So whether it is Cornwall or, you know, Costa Rica, it just all like, you know, live within your means. But I do think it isn't a good thing that they've made it a little bit more unattainable for those who may have in their everyday life been able to afford a trip to Dubai, but now all of a sudden the prices have skyrocketed and they can't afford it, and that's where we're going to start to get this breakdown in the two-tier society. But just kind of to circle back to the bit of the question, Nushi, is you someone who is now obviously abroad and you've gone through such an experience, was this, like all the experiences and everything that's happened, has it been worth it though, like so far on your trip, or?
I guess, okay, so the question would be like, how do you like measure value? Like, how do I, like if I wasn't here, what would I be doing? And so if I wasn't in Costa Rica, I'm kind of, part of my motivation for coming here was, you know, I was basically in my house most of the time. I obviously had limited potential to meet people due to lockdown and see friends, or I could see them, but before I left, like nothing was open. So I would see them in parks or kind of the street. You know, it was very, very limited in how I could socialize. And this had been my life for months and months and months. And so, yeah, so in that sense, it's been completely worth it. On the other hand, there's this, like, and my mentality is often like this too, which I've had to kind of get out of while I've been here, which is I have like an urgent need to feel like busy all the time and productive and like I'm doing things. I'm a nightmare to ever travel with, because I'm like up at 6, like grabbing people out of bed. Like I don't care like when you went to sleep. Like we're going to do something, then we're going to do something else, then we're going to do something else. And I've had to kind of get out of that. First of all, because I think it's necessary. It's an unhealthy way to be. But second of all, because if you're doing that for 2 months, I could be bankrupt in a week. So, so probably for like in terms of, so yeah, it has been worth it. It's been worth it to experience new things and just to get out of a place where I was trapped in my house for so long. But I also agree with you. You know, this summer the UK will be open. If we're talking about the UK specifically, the kind of the options for actually doing things will be very different to when I left. You will be able to go inside. You will be able to, you know, from June 21st, you can have parties. You can go to fest clubs, you know. And so it's a very different comparison that people will be making when they can book without having to volunteer than otherwise. So I guess the first kind of 2 weeks I was here, I was living with a host family. So I was living with a local family in a really remote part of the country in a place called Evita. And we were having, you know, 2 meals a day together, breakfast and dinner. And I don't speak Spanish and they didn't speak English. And so the kind of way we communicated was very limited. And so even when I left, they asked me, you know, what my name was. And so that part of the trip was actually quite difficult for obvious reasons. But on the other hand, again, I'm comparing it to being back in London and really just not being particularly productive or doing anything. And so it has been worth it, but different people have different priorities. It depends. Like if you're, what's important to you? What is your quality of life? How will your quality of life compare at home based on what you're up to and what's important to you and what makes you happy compared to what it will be like if you go abroad? So for me, yes, but for others, maybe not.
You know, one thing that's really intrigued me. So, you know, one of the requirements for like the traffic light system, green, amber, red, you will have to do like a test before you enter the country, when you leave the country. How do they know if people have done the test accurately? Like if it's just like what I think it is in my head, you take out the swab and you do it yourself, they could just like swizzle that in like the plug and then put it back in and say that they've done it. Like, how do people know that they've actually done it? Do you know what I mean? Because that in itself breeds some concerns there in terms of how we're actually managing not to get ourselves back into the lockdown.
Well, they say with rapid tests sometimes, I don't know if you guys have it, but I have the at-home rapid test. I've got a box of them, and you have to do it yourself. They like take 30 minutes to tell you if you're COVID or not. But they did tell me it was about basically like 50% accurate because basically human error when taking the test. So I don't know about the proper testing, but that's just the one that I have at home.
Okay.
The tests are actually quite shady. So I did my PCR test. No, seriously, they are, because if I had known... No, genuinely. Okay, let me tell you my experience. So basically, I did my test, my rapid, long test, and every single day before then, I'd gone to Wembley, like a few miles from my house, to get the free rapid test just to make sure I definitely didn't have COVID. I knew I didn't have it. Anyway, so I went to the PCR centre. But when you book the PCR test, they ask you on the certificate what day you want it to be shown on the certificate, what your name is, what your passport number is. They didn't check my ID. They didn't check anything. I could have sent anyone in there and just told them to take the test for me. Or I could have taken it like 2 weeks before and told them to put that date on it. So in terms of like actual testing, it's super shady. Another thing out here. So while I was volunteering, for the first time in many years, I spent a lot of time with teenagers because a lot of the people out here are like gap year style people. And they were also on the volunteering, and they were quite shocked that I was so old and joining them. But a lot of them had somehow cheated the system and got the rapid test because they're free compared to the PCR, which was, I think, like £120 or something. And so the testing is not that accurate, and a lot of people are cheating the system. While I've been here as well, there are people who have said to me that they believe they had COVID, they lost sense of taste, they lost sense of smell, they were coughing everywhere, and they still continued with their daily lives and mixing and mingling with people because they didn't want to stop their holiday. So actually, but again, this problem is not specific to here. I'm sure there are tons of people in the UK as well who believe they have COVID but have to work or have some other reason that they don't want to go into quarantine, and so they're doing the same thing. So I guess there's two separate issues there. But in terms of testing for holidays, it is completely, like, you could scam it so easily. In the UK anyway, maybe they're more secure in Costa Rica, but that's my experience.
I thought as much, and that's why I brought it up, and I'm glad that you touched on it, because I didn't want to go in talking about something that I didn't have much experience in. But to be honest with you, I actually thought as much. That's why I'm saying it's so bogus in terms of what they're implementing, because it's like, how can you even bloody check? Because when I looked at that traffic light system, I was thinking, I need someone to explain to me how you would do this testing on your own, and they make sure that nothing can be 100% valid. But if people can cheat the system, if it's kind of 50-50, if you can kind of like put a different name, say what you want, which I already thought, then really and truly, are you actually putting a system in place to reduce the amount of numbers and essentially reduce the number of people who are catching COVID? Or are you just doing it to make people feel like you're doing something when actually you're just running around in a circle blowing hot air in the air? And that's what it seems like to me.
I think it's the latter, Mona. I'm definitely agreeing with you.
I think so too.
I definitely think
so too.
Honestly, because when the gyms opened back up, I got all these emails about everything that was going to happen, about having to wear the mask when you're walking around the gym, but you can take it off when you're on the equipment, and then how you have to spray every machine down once you've been on it, and there's going to be all this cleaning stuff, and everything's going to be around you, and antibacterial up to the wazoo. And I got there, and nothing was happening. No one had a mask on. I didn't see one bottle of spray. I saw at the back of the gym a piece of cloth that I saw some people like tearing, like on them hand towels, but that was all. And I thought, where are all the procedures that they told me was going to happen? And nothing was going on. The equipment was spaced out a little bit, but that was as far as it was. And I just thought, it's a lot of hot air. It's just kind of like, this is what's going to happen. But whether people are going to follow it to the T, I don't know. So whether you think it's worth it or not, choose to go on holiday. It's your choice. So thanks for watching and listening to another episode of Ethnically Speaking. Let's keep the conversation going. Are you planning a holiday now that the world's opening up? Where's the first destination on your list? And let us know down in the comments below. For a summary of everything we've talked about today, head over to unitedmelaningroup.com/ES070. There is a link in the description below. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. We'll see you on Monday, where we'll be talking all about handling rejection. But until then, make sure you wear your mask, you wash your hands, and you stay safe.